Tonight, the world outside your window ceases to exist. We are moving backward through the mist to a city of salt and silence, where the streets are made of water and the shadows carry the scent of ancient silk. This is Venice, 1012-54, and you are finally home as the heavy velvet curtains of time draw back. Imagine the rhythmic, hollow slap of the Adriatic against moss-covered stone. You are stepping into the life of a boy, born into a world of silver coins and secret maps, a boy named Marco Polo. But at the center of this golden life is a profound, quiet void. His father is not a man, but a legend, lost somewhere along the dust-choked trails of the Silk Road. For 15 years, Marco has lived in the silence of that absence, waiting for a story that is finally about to begin. Venice, in the mid-13th century, was not merely a city of merchants. It was a sprawling liquid empire built on the collective hunger of men who dreamed of horizons no one had yet mapped. Close your eyes and feel the damp, cool air of the lagoon as it settles into your skin. Here, wealth was measured not just in gold, but in the exotic whispers carried back by galleys returning from the Levant. As a child, Marco's playground was a labyrinth of stone quays and arched bridges where the air was thick with the intoxicating aroma of raw cinnamon, aged cedar, and the dry, earthy scent of unrolled silk. He grew up in the care of an extended family, his days marked by the rhythmic, hypnotic clink of silver being counted in the dim light of merchant ledgers. This was a world of salt air and ambition, where every sunset over the Grand Canal seemed to point toward a mystery waiting in the east. Yet, for Marco, the most persistent mystery was the man whose blood ran through his veins. Marco Polo, his father, was a ghost of the caravan trails. Long before Marco's first breath, Niccolo and his uncle Maffeo had vanished into the vastness of Central Asia, chasing the sunrise through kingdoms that existed in the West only as half-remembered rumors. For 15 long years, Marco knew his father only as a collection of tales, whispers of Constantinople's golden domes, the biting winds of the Caucasus, and the endless, shimmering empires that lay beyond the Persian horizon. These were not simple bedtime stories. They were fragments of a reality so distant it felt like a dream. Marco would walk the docks, watching the horizon, his childhood shaped not by a father's voice, but by the weight of a father's legend. Take a moment now to simply exist in this quiet Venetian evening. Hear the soft, rhythmic rocking of a gondola tied to a wooden post, swaying with the slow, predictable breath of the sea. There is no urgency here. The gold, the trade, and the maps, they are all part of a fading world. You are safe, you are still. The weight of your body is sinking into the softness of your bed. Just as the city of Venice settles into the dark, protective embrace of the lagoon, there is nothing you need to do, and nowhere you need to be, other than here, drifting on the tide of this memory. The silence of 15 years is finally drawing to an end. In the year 1269, the horizon finally yields. The father who was a myth is returning, and he brings with him a message that will shatter the boundaries of the known world. The whispers of Constantinople and the high plateaus of Persia are no longer just sailors' dreams. They are the first steps of a journey that will stretch across the spine of the world. The boy from Venice is about to become a bridge between two civilizations, and the tales of the East are about to become a reality more vivid, more strange, and more beautiful than anyone dared to imagine. Imagine a childhood defined not by a father's warm presence, but by the hollow, echoing weight of his absence, and the faint, dusty scent of ancient parchment. For young Marco, The sprawling world of Venice was a beautiful, liquid cage, a labyrinth of emerald canals and white stone that felt at once like an empire and a prison. His only window out of the lagoon was the faded indigo ink of speculative maps, hand-drawn by men who had only seen the world in their fever dreams. While other children in the piazza listened to the soft lullabies of their mothers, Marco fell asleep to a different kind of rhythm. The dull, hypnotic clink of merchant ledgers being closed, and the metallic, rhythmic counting of silver coins in the back rooms of the Rialto. His mind did not rest in Venice. It wandered far beyond the salt-streaked quays, drifting across oceans of vellum and ink. He spent his long, quiet afternoons tracing his fingers over weathered sheepskin, wondering which jagged mountain range currently held his father's footstep, and which distant, unnamed river reflected a face he had never truly known. This world of parchment was his only true inheritance, a map of a ghost, a landscape he could only inhabit when his eyes were tightly closed. In the sun-drenched, bustling heart of the city, a restless curiosity began to bloom like a rare, exotic spice in a hidden garden. Marco was a shadow at the docks, lingering near the great stone pillars of the customs house, his ears straining to catch the rough, melodic whispers of sailors returning from the Levant. These men bore the marks of the sun and the salt, their skin darkened to the color of polished teak, and their voices carried the weight of the impossible. He stood in the spray of the Adriatic, listening to fragments of stories that felt more like fever dreams than history. He heard of the shimmering domes of Constantinople that seemed to pierce the very fabric of the heavens, of the bone-chilling, razor-sharp winds that swept across the iron-gray peaks of the Caucasus, and afar, the endless golden empires that stretched toward the sunrise, far beyond the Persian horizon. Every stop along the Silk Road was a precious puzzle piece he gathered and stored in the quiet archives of his mind. He was assembling a picture of an Asia that both fascinated and terrified, the medieval soul, a land of silk and fire, of strange gods and cities that glowed like embers in the dark. These tales were half believed and half dreamed, drifting through the damp Venetian air like the intoxicating scent of distant wood smoke and camel sweat. To the young Marco, the East was not a destination. It was a living, breathing promise that filled the vast, aching silence of his lonely home. As you listen to these words, feel your own breath begin to slow and deepen, finding a natural harmony with the unhurried, heavy pace of the 13th century. There is no urgency in this world of wooden hulls and shifting sands. The relentless, rhythmic pulse of the tides against the mossy foundations of the city is the only clock that matters now. The worries of your modern day are beginning to dissolve, like old ink washed away by a gentle rain. They are becoming blurred, losing their sharp edges, and slowly slipping away from the center of your mind. You are drifting into a state of pure, quiet observation, much like the young boy standing on the edge of the stone quay, watching the horizon for a ship that has been lost to the mist for a lifetime. The air around you is turning cool and still, and the vast weight of the centuries feels as light and as soft as a veil of fine silk draped over your shoulder. Then, in the fading light of the year 1269, the long silence was finally, irrevocably broken. The horizon, which had remained stubbornly empty for 15 years, finally yielded. Marco, now a young man with bright, observant eyes and a mind tempered by years of patient waiting, stood face to face with the father who had been nothing more than a myth. Marco Polo returned not just with chests of jewels and bolts of shimmering fabric, but with a revelation that would shatter the very boundaries of the known world. This was the moment Marco had spent his entire life preparing for. He was not merely reuniting with a long-lost parent, he was being summoned into the inner circle of the most powerful sovereign on earth, Kublai Khan. The great Khan had made a bold, unprecedented request, that the Polos return to his magnificent court, and that they bring with them a young man of intelligence and promise. Marco, though neither a trained warrior nor a seasoned diplomat, possessed the one thing an emperor values above all else: a mind that was as open as the sea and a heart that was utterly captivated by the beauty of the unknown. The boy from the canals was no longer a mere observer of faded maps. He was about to become the very ink that filled the empty spaces of history. The mission laid before him was immense, a journey that would span a lifetime and bridge two worlds that had never truly touched. Behind him lay the safety of the Emerald Lagoon and the familiar bells of St. Mark's. Ahead lay a thousand-threaded artery of trade, profound danger, and unimaginable wonder. The true journey was beginning now, a slow, deliberate march into the heart of the world. Across scorched deserts where the heat vibrates against the earth, and onto high, silent plateaus where the air turns thin, silver, and cold. We are leaving the stone bridges of Venice behind, stepping out into the vast, shifting sands where the greatest legends of the East are waiting to be whispered into existence. In the quiet, shifting light of 1271, the great journey finally exhales into reality. Marco, his father Niccolo, and his uncle Maffeo turn their backs on the emerald waters of the Adriatic, stepping slowly into the sprawling ancient web of the Silk Road. This was not merely a path, but a thousand-threaded artery of the world, a living, breathing map that pulsed with the rhythm of countless footsteps before them. As they left the Mediterranean coast behind, the familiar sounds of church bells and stone streets were replaced by the vast, heavy silence of the horizon. They moved as part of a great caravan, a slow-moving fortress of cloth, wood, and bone, drifting through Armenia and deep into the heart of Persia. Imagine the steady, hypnotic swaying of the camels, their padded feet striking the earth with a muffled thud that resonates in the very center of your chest. The world begins to stretch, the sky grows wider, and the air carries the scent of sun-baked dust and the far-off promise of unknown land. As the sun dips below the edge of the world, a deep indigo peace settles over the caravan. Tonight, your ceiling is not made of plaster or wood, but of a billion shimmering stars that feel close enough to touch in the thin, crystal-clear air of the high plateaus. There is a profound sense of safety in this isolation. You are surrounded by the flickering amber glow of the campfires, the low, melodic murmurs of the guides, and the comforting, rhythmic chewing of the resting beast. Every morning, you wake not to the rush of the modern world, but to the slow, intoxicating perfume of exotic spices eating over a coal fire, blended with the dry, earthy scent of camel sweat and the sharp, clean aroma of distant cedar smoke. The journey is long, but there is no hurry. You are moving at the speed of the wind, at the speed of a heartbeat, drifting through scorched deserts where the heat vibrates against the sand like a silent song. The road soon leads them toward the jagged silver spine of the world, the Pamir Mountains. Here, the air turns thin and cold, so sharp it feels like breathing diamonds. Even in the height of summer, ancient snow clings to the rocks, and the silence is so absolute it becomes a physical weight. Marco, barely a man, proves himself a master of observation in these heights, scribbling mental notes of architecture, dress, and the superstitions of the mountain folk. Then comes the Gobi Desert, a brutal, beautiful stretch of shifting gold and haunting hallucinations. In this vast sea of sand, where storms can bury a man alive and water is more precious than the finest silk, the caravan remains your sanctuary. You are tucked away in the heart of this moving village, protected by the wisdom of the elders and the sturdy endurance of the animals. As you pass through ghost cities and towns that look like memories after a war or plague, through all the hardship, through the months where Marco fell ill and had to rest in the kingdom of Badakhshan, there is a constant, steady progression. Feel your own body sinking deeper into the softness of your surroundings, just as Marco's mind sank into the endless rhythm of the trail. The mountains, the deserts, the rivers, they are all passing by like the slow pages of a book you are reading in a dream. You are safe, you are warm, and you are part of a lineage of travelers that has crossed this spine of the earth since the beginning of time. Every stopping point is a puzzle piece falling into place, revealing a world far grander and more complex than anything ever whispered in the taverns of Venice. Then, the true scale of the journey reveals itself in a way that stuns the modern mind. From the moment they stepped off their ship in Acre until the moment they finally stood before the gates of northern China, Marco Polo had spent over 3.5 years in constant motion. 3.5 years of sunrises and sunsets, of changing languages and shifting climates, just to reach a single destination. It was 1075 when the Venetian boy, now hardened by the road and wise beyond his years, finally reached the court of the great Khan. He had traveled more miles than any king in Europe could imagine, and he had done so with nothing but a clever mind and a heart that refused to be small. The dust of the Silk Road is finally settling behind them. The long, rhythmic march across the spine of the world has come to its end, but a new kind of wonder is about to begin. Ahead, the massive, iron-studded gates of the largest empire the world has ever seen are slowly swinging open. The boy who grew up on the whispers of sailors is about to step into the inner circle of a ruler more powerful than legend. The golden palace of Xanadu is waiting, and for Marco Polo, the doors to a reality more magnificent than any map are about to unlock. Within the quiet, high-walled corridors of the great Khan's sprawling empire, Marco Polo encountered wonders that seemed to defy the very laws of nature and commerce known to the medieval West. He recorded, with a profound mixture of disbelief and quiet fascination, the use of paper money, not gold, not silver, but simple sheets of bark stripped from the mulberry tree. To a Venetian merchant, a man raised with the heavy, honest clink of metal coins in his palm, the idea of a kingdom running entirely on paper felt as ethereal and precarious as a dream. Yet, he watched as it functioned with a silent, absolute efficiency, backed only by the invisible power of a royal seal. Even more strange to his eyes were the black stones dug from the deep veins of the earth coal that burned longer, steadier, and far hotter than any wood fire he had ever tended in the hearths of Italy. Marco sat by these fires in the freezing northern winters, watching the stones turn from a cold, matte black to a vibrant, glowing red. It was a subterranean energy, a gift from the earth that the West had yet to master, casting a soft, amber light over the faces of the scholars and officials who gathered in the silent halls of the palace. Feel the warmth of that ancient fire now. Imagine the steady, unmoving heat radiating toward you, grounding you in this moment of historical stillness. As he traveled further into the heart of the realm, Marco became more than a guest. He became the eyes and ears of the empire, witnessing a level of social organization that felt like a vast living machine. He marveled at the YAM system, a relentless and sophisticated postal network that kept the Khan's massive territories connected at a speed that felt almost supernatural to a 13th century mind. Imagine a world where information flows like a river. Every 25 miles, a station stood ready with fresh, powerful horses and rested couriers, ensuring that a message could cross thousands of miles of mountain and plain without ever losing its momentum. He described the great cities of Hangzhou and Kambalik sprawling, urban labyrinths more magnificent and orderly than any place in Europe, where the nights were never truly dark. Instead, they were vibrant with the soft, flickering glow of tens of thousands of colorful silk lanterns. These cities were lit with a festive, perpetual light that reflected off the calm surfaces of man-made canals, illuminating markets that bustled with precious silks, strange spices, and technologies that the medieval mind. There was a rhythm to this life, a sense of immense scale, balanced by meticulous detail, a world where paper was gold and stones were fire. Amidst these marvels of administration and light, Marco recorded a revelation that bordered on the terrifying, the true, destructive power of gunpowder. While Europe might have known of simple incendiaries, the Mongols had refined this substance into a psychological weapon of immense gravity. Marco described fireworks that were used not only to paint the night sky with temporary celebratory blossoms of fire, but also to sow absolute chaos and primal terror in the hearts of enemies during the heat of battle. The sudden, thunderous cracks that shook the ground and the blinding flashes of light were designed to unman the bravest warriors, making them believe the very heavens were fracturing and falling over their heads. It was a total mastery over the elements, a fusion of delicate beauty and raw brutality that characterized the entire Mongol world. Take a moment now to listen to the distant, rhythmic beat of the courier's horse in your mind. Imagine that steady, unwavering gallop across the vast, moonlit plains of Central Asia, the sound of hooves striking the dry earth in a perfect, hypnotic meter. There is no urgency in this sound for you. It is merely a heartbeat, a pulse that carries stories through the deep stillness of the night. The lanterns of the great cities are beginning to dim now, turning into soft, glowing embers in the corners of your mind. You are safe, drifting in the vast, orderly silence of an empire that spans the horizon. The weight of your body is fully supported by the earth, just as the great Khan's absolute peace once supported the millions of souls within his borders. For 17 long years, Marco served as a bridge between these disparate worlds, witnessing history as it was being written in silk, paper, and fire. He had seen the steam-choked jungles of Burma and the silent, thin-aired highlands of Tibet, becoming a man shaped by the East in every way. But as the years turned into decades, a quiet, persistent ache began to stir within the depths of his soul. The golden palaces of the Khan and the relentless, rhythmic gallop of the Yam couriers began to feel like a beautiful, recurring dream, while the salt-streaked canals and the cold, mist-covered waters of Venice started to shimmer in his memory like a distant, fading promise. After nearly 20 years in the service of an emperor, the traveler began to wonder if he still remembered the way back to the city built on water. Venice was calling, a whisper of home beneath the grandeur of the East. The departure from the vibrant East was not a sudden escape, but a long, bittersweet exhaling of a life lived within the golden frame of a dream. In the early 1290s, as Kublai Khan's legendary reign began to flicker like a dying lantern, the Polos were finally granted the permission they had long sought to leave. Their path home was not the dust-choked trails of the Silk Road, but a treacherous, unpredictable maritime voyage across the surging currents of the South China Sea and the vast Indian Ocean. They were tasked with a final delicate mission for the aging Khan, escorting a Mongol princess to her future groom, a Persian prince. The journey was a brutal test of human endurance. Storms ravaged their fleet of galleys, and disease spread through the crowded, damp holds like a silent predator. By the time they reached the distant coast of Persia, hundreds of their companions had vanished into the deep. Yet the Polo survived, clinging to the fading promise of the Emerald Lagoon they had left behind more than 2 decades ago. When they finally stepped onto the stone quays of Venice in 1295, they did not return as conquering heroes, but as ghosts wrapped in the heavy travel-worn silks of the East. Everything they remembered had shifted in the light of time. Venice was now at war with its bitter rival, Genoa, and the air of the city was thick with the cold edge of suspicion and the steel of soldiers. To their fellow citizens, the Polos were unrecognizable. Their skin was darkened and leathery from years of Asian sun. Their Italian was fractured by foreign accents, and their clothes were a bizarre tapestry of Mongol fashion. Their stories of golden palaces and paper money were met with mocking laughter, dismissed as the wild exaggerations of men who had wandered too far for too long. Within a few short years, the traveler who had crossed the spine of the world was drafted into a naval battle and captured, finding himself locked behind the cold, unyielding bars of a Genoese prison. It was in this dim, damp silence of the dungeon that the most profound journey of Marco Polo's life truly began. There, in a small cell shared with a writer of romances named Rostichello da Pisa, the memories of 24 years began to pour out like a flood of afternoon light. As Rostichello dipped his quill into the dark ink, Marco spoke. He spoke of the burning Gobi sands, the jade-colored rivers, and the silver-haired Khan sitting on his throne. This was the birth of Il Milione, or the travels of Marco Polo, a book that would spread through the courts and taverns of Europe like wildfire, forever shattering the narrow worldview of the Middle Ages. The wet stone walls of the prison did not confine his mind. Instead, they became a quiet sanctuary where the vastness of Asia was distilled into words that would inspire generations of explorers to come. Take a deep, slow breath and feel the absolute stillness of that stone chamber. There is a strange, heavy peace in these cold walls, a quiet that allows the mind to wander across mountains and oceans without moving a single inch. The frantic sounds of the modern world are fading away, replaced by the rhythmic, hypnotic scratching of a quill on parchment. You are safe. You are held in the quiet, protective embrace of history. Like Marco in his quiet cell, you can let the weight of the world fall away, leaving only the soft, flowing current of memory and story to carry you toward a dreamless sleep. Marco Polo lived to see his name echo across the centuries. Yet even on his deathbed in 1324, he remained a man of deep mysteries. When urged by his friends to admit that his book was a collection of lies, he simply replied with a final haunting truth: "I did not tell half of what I saw." His physical journey had ended in the familiar canals of Venice, but the horizon he stretched for humanity would never shrink again. As the echoes of the great Khan's court finally fade into the night, the air begins to change. The scent of salt and cold stone is being replaced by something deeper, something far more ancient. A different kind of legacy is beginning to rise, not from the silk of the East, but from the sacred, swirling smoke of ancient altars. Long before perfume became a fleeting luxury of the modern world, it was a sacred bridge, a slow, intentional prayer rising through the stillness of the air to meet the divine. The very word we use today, perfume, whispers its ancient and smoke-filled origins in every soft syllable. It comes from the Latin perfumum, meaning literally through smoke. It is a fitting beginning for our journey, for that is exactly how the story of scent started. Not trapped in a glass bottle, but as a fragrant spirit ascending toward the dark heavens, in delicate, swirling spirals. In the ancient world, fragrance was not merely a personal indulgence. It was the invisible, potent language of the gods, a way for mortal souls to communicate with the eternal through the medium of the shifting air. Tonight, let us journey back to the Emerald Nile Valley, where the air in the great stone temples was once so thick with sacred aromas that it felt like a warm, physical embrace. Imagine stepping into the cool limestone halls of a temple in ancient Egypt, leaving the white, scorching heat of the desert sun behind you. The atmosphere inside is heavy, silent, and saturated with the deep, grounding scent of burning myrrh, the bright, resinous clarity of frankincense, and the incredibly complex, honeyed layers of kaifi. Kaifi was a masterpiece of ancient alchemy, a blend of 16 precious ingredients including thick wine, sun-dried raisins, wild honey, and a collection of aromatic herbs, all crafted with the silent precision of a sacred ritual. To the Egyptians, these scents were not mere smells. They were divine, the sweat of the gods, and they believed that to smell sweet was to be pure, to be standing closer to the celestial realm. Every layer of Egyptian life, from the cradle to the silent tomb, was woven with these fragrant threads. The priests would offer these scents at the turning points of the day, dawn, noon, and dusk, the rising smoke, symbolizing the soul's steady ascent toward the sun. When the great pharaohs walked, they were anointed with sacred oils that announced their absolute power before they even spoke a single word. Even in the final journey to the afterlife, scent was the constant, faithful companion. The dead were carefully embalmed with aromatic resins, and their tombs were filled with elegant alabaster jars of precious perfumes to ensure they remained fragrant and pure through the long silence of eternity. There is a profound revelation hidden in the absolute stillness of these ancient burial chambers. When the tomb of Tutankhamun was finally opened in the year 1922, the archaeologists were met with a sensation that defied the laws of time itself. Amidst the piles of gold and the cold stone, they reported a faint, haunting trace of perfume still lingering in the air after more than 3,000 years of total silence. It was a testament to the enduring quiet power of scent, a memory of a king's devotion, preserved in a jar, waiting through the long millennia to be breathed in once more. Now take a slow, rhythmic breath and let your own mind drift like that ancient, sacred incense. Imagine a thin, elegant plume of blue smoke rising from a bronze brazier, curling and dancing in the dim golden light of a temple. Watch it as it twists into delicate, unpredictable shapes, slowly expanding until it fills every corner of the space around you. It is light, it is soft, and it carries away the heavy weight of your daily thoughts. You are safe in this fragrant sanctuary. The world outside is distant, fading into a blur, and the only thing that matters is the rhythmic, peaceful flow of the smoke. Let it wrap around your tired mind like a warm silk veil, guiding you into a state of deep, effortless relaxation. The light of the Nile is beginning to fade into a soft indigo twilight, but the torch of fragrance is not extinguished. As the sun sets over the pyramids, the desert wines are already carrying the secrets of the smoke eastward, across the vast, shifting sands, and over the silent mountain passes. The torch is being passed to the lush river valleys and the walled, secret gardens of the east. A new chapter is waiting to be told, where the sacred smoke of the temple transforms into the liquid golden soul of the flower. Long before perfume became a fleeting luxury of the modern world, it was a sacred bridge. Slow, intentional prayer, rising through the stillness of the air to meet the divine. The very word we use today, perfume, whispers its ancient and smoke-filled origins in every soft syllable. It comes from the Latin perfumum, meaning literally through smoke. It is a fitting beginning for our journey, for that is exactly how the story of scent started. Not trapped in a glass bottle, but as a fragrant spirit ascending toward the dark heavens, in delicate, swirling spirals. In the ancient world, fragrance was not merely a personal indulgence. It was the invisible, potent language of the gods, a way for mortal souls to communicate with the eternal through the medium of the shifting air. Tonight, let us journey back to the Emerald Nile Valley, where the air in the great stone temples was once so thick with sacred aromas that it felt like a warm, physical embrace. Imagine stepping into the cool limestone halls of a temple in ancient Egypt, leaving the white, scorching heat of the desert sun behind you. The atmosphere inside is heavy, silent, and saturated with the deep, grounding scent of burning myrrh, the bright, resinous clarity of frankincense, and the incredibly complex honeyed layers of kaifa. Kaifi was a masterpiece of ancient alchemy, a blend of 16 precious ingredients, including thick wine, sun-dried raisins, wild honey, and a collection of aromatic herbs, all crafted with the silent precision of a sacred ritual. To the Egyptians, these scents were not mere smells. They were divine, the sweat of the gods, and they believed that to smell sweet was to be pure, to be standing closer to the celestial realm. Every layer of Egyptian life, from the cradle to the silent tomb, was woven with these fragrant threads. The priests would offer these scents at the turning points of the day dawn, noon, and dusk, the rising smoke, symbolizing the soul's steady ascent toward the sun. When the great pharaohs walked, they were anointed with sacred oils that announced their absolute power before they even spoke a single word. Even in the final journey to the afterlife, scent was the constant, faithful companion. The dead were carefully embalmed with aromatic resins, and their tombs were filled with elegant alabaster jars of precious perfumes to ensure they remained fragrant and pure through the long silence of eternity. There is a profound revelation hidden in the absolute stillness of these ancient burial chambers. When the tomb of Tutankhamun was finally opened in the year 1922, the archaeologists were met with a sensation that defied the laws of time itself. Amidst the piles of gold and the cold stone, they reported a faint, haunting trace of perfume still lingering in the air after more than 3,000 years of total silence. It was a testament to the enduring quiet power of scent, a memory of a king's devotion, preserved in a jar, waiting through the long millennia to be breathed in once more. Now, take a slow, rhythmic breath and let your own mind drift like that ancient, sacred incense. Imagine a thin, elegant plume of blue smoke rising from a bronze brazier, curling and dancing in the dim, golden light of a temple. Watch it as it twists into delicate, unpredictable shapes, slowly expanding until it fills every corner of the space around you. It is light, it is soft, and it carries away the heavy weight of your daily thoughts. You are safe in this fragrant sanctuary. The world outside is distant, fading into a blur, and the only thing that matters is the rhythmic, peaceful flow of the smoke. Let it wrap around your tired mind like a warm silk veil, guiding you into a state of deep, effortless relaxation. The light of the Nile is beginning to fade into a soft indigo twilight, but the torch of fragrance is not extinguished. As the sun sets over the pyramids, The desert winds are already carrying the secrets of the smoke eastward, across the vast shifting sands and over the silent mountain passes. The torch is being passed to the lush river valleys and the walled, secret gardens of the east. A new chapter is waiting to be told, where the sacred smoke of the temple transforms into the liquid, golden soul of the flower. As the ancient world shifted its gaze toward the rising sun, the art of scent found a new, vibrant home in the lush lands of ancient India and the meticulously kept, green gardens of Persia. Here, fragrance was no longer just a smoke sacrifice for the gods. It became a vital, breathing part of love, medicine, and the very fabric of daily human life. In the Indus Valley, the connection between scent and spirit deepened until the air itself was considered a form of prayer. The ancient Vedic texts spoke of Gandha fragrance as one of the key elements of sacred worship, filling the temples with the creamy, grounding aroma of sandalwood paste and the fresh, intoxicating scent of endless floral garland. In these fertile lands, the craft of the perfumer evolved into something truly miraculous, the creation of attar. Imagine a small, quiet courtyard where an artisan works with a patience that spans across generations. Attar is the true distillation of a flower's soul into oil, often using a base of pure, aged sandalwood. The process is slow, rhythmic, and deeply meditative. Thousands upon thousands of delicate petals, jasmine, rose, or earthy vetiver are gathered at the perfect moment of the morning and placed into heavy copper stills over low, steady flames. There's no rush in this world, only the constant, gentle heat that allows the scent to infuse the oil drop by precious, golden drop. It is a labor of absolute love that can take many weeks, a science of patience that transforms the fleeting, temporary beauty of a blossom into a liquid memory that can last for a lifetime. Farther to the west, in the heart of the Persian Empire, the love of fragrance was mirrored in the profound love of the garden. The great kings, Cyrus and Darius, designed their magnificent palaces to be sensory sanctuaries, where the evening breeze was intentionally channeled through groves of roses and sweet violets. The Persian word for rose, gul, became synonymous with beauty itself, finding its way into every corner of their sophisticated culture. From the verses of longing poets to the healing elixirs of physicians, to the Persians, a chosen scent was a marker of elegance, a quiet gesture of grace that announced one's refinement to the world without a single spoken word. Even farther to the east, in the vast, disciplined landscapes of ancient China, perfume took on a more subtle, meditative, and scholarly role. Here, it was associated with inner balance, harmony, and deep reflection rather than outward display. The Chinese did not seek to overwhelm the senses. They sought to balance them perfectly. They perfumed their inkstones so that the very act of writing became a fragrant meditation. Their heavy silk robes were lightly scented with the aroma of agarwood or cassia bark, creating a soft, persistent breath of calm that followed them as they moved through the world. In this quiet world, perfume was a silent declaration of character, a whisper of peace in a busy, changing world. Now, listen closely to the soft, rhythmic sound of a small fire crackling beneath a copper, still in your mind. It is a low, comforting murmur, like the distant sound of a mountain stream. Imagine the steady warmth of that fire, a heat that never flickers or fades. As the water simmers in the dark, visualize the essence of 1,000 roses slowly rising, condensing, and turning into a single glowing drop of oil. The heat is not aggressive, it is a cradle, holding the scent until it is ready to be born. Let that warmth seep into your own tired body, relaxing every muscle and quietening the chatter of your mind. You are in a secret garden of ancient Persia, surrounded by the cool, long shadows of cypress trees and the gentle, repetitive sound of running water. You are safe, you are still, and the world is as peaceful as a flower slowly opening at dawn. The gardens are quiet now, and the copper stills have finished their long work. But the journey of the scent is about to take a dramatic and extravagant turn. The moderation of the East and the quiet balance of the Chinese scholars are about to meet the unbridled, legendary excess of a rising empire to the West. The luxury of Rome is calling, and with it, a scientific revolution from the Islamic world that will change the alchemy of scent forever. The golden oils are preparing to travel once more, across vast oceans and through the turning centuries, to a place where fragrance will become a symbol of ultimate earthly power. As the light of the classical world began to dim across the Mediterranean, the heart of fragrance migrated to the thriving, sun-drenched cities of the Islamic Golden Age. Here, in the great libraries and laboratories of Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo, perfume was no longer just a luxury. It was elevated into a refined, sophisticated science and a deeply held sacred tradition. From the 7th century onward, the rise of Islam brought with it a profound respect for personal cleanliness, inner beauty, and the power of scent. The Prophet Muhammad himself spoke with fondness of fragrance, considering it one of the things made beloved to him in this earthly life. Because of this spiritual endorsement, wearing perfume became much more than an aesthetic choice. It was an expression of faith, a way to move through the world with a sense of grace and purity. In this intellectually rich and curious environment, master perfumers known as attarines began to experiment with a form of botanical alchemy that the world had never seen before. They sought to capture the very soul of the natural world, extracting essential oils from delicate flowers, rare woods, pungent spices, and ancient resins with a precision that bordered on the miraculous. One legendary figure stands at the center of this aromatic revolution, the Persian polymath Ibn Sina, also known to the West as Avicenna. Around the 10th century, he fundamentally changed the history of scent by perfecting the complex art of steam distillation. By developing a sophisticated cooling coil to condense aromatic vapors, he managed to isolate the pure, ethereal essence of flowers, most famously the deep, intoxicating scent of the rose. This singular discovery changed everything, allowing for perfumes that were far more consistent, more delicate, and significantly longer lasting than any heavy oil of the ancient past. The reach of this fragrant golden empire was truly immense. Arab traders carried these refined liquid treasures across the vast Silk Road and over the surging waves of the Indian Ocean. They brought frankincense from the sun-baked hills of Oman, heavy musk from the high silent plateaus of Tibet, and rare ambergris gathered from the deep, mysterious currents of the sea. Delicate glass flasks filled with these precious, concentrated liquids moved from the markets of India to the palaces of Spain, leaving behind a persistent trail of scent that defined an entire era of human civilization. Within Islamic culture itself, fragrance was woven into the very fabric of daily existence. Homes welcomed travelers with hands washed in cooling rose water, and private rooms were laced with the heavy woody scent of Bacor burning chips of precious agar wood that sent thin ribbons of smoke into the evening air. There is a gesture of profound, silent reverence hidden in the quietest corners of the libraries from this age. Beyond the realms of the personal and the public, fragrance reached toward the divine through the medium of the written word. It was a beautiful and common practice to lightly scent the very pages of the Quran, a symbolic sensory gesture intended to honor the sacred text with a tribute of musk or rose oil. It was a world where knowledge, deep faith, and sensory beauty were inseparable, all carried on the invisible breath of a masterpiece of perfume. Now, close your eyes and imagine yourself standing in the cool, shaded interior of an ancient apothecary in the heart of Baghdad. The air here is perfectly still, protected from the relentless desert heat by thick, ancient stone wall. Your eyes rest upon long rows of delicate hand-blown glass flasks, each one uniquely shaped and filled with a liquid gold or a deep, mysterious emerald oil. Imagine the smooth, chilled surface of the glass against the palm of your hand. As you hold it, the frantic, noisy pace of the outside world slows to a mere crawl. You are safe in this quiet, orderly laboratory of scent. Every single drop of oil inside these cooling vessels represents years of golden sun, rich soil, and the patient, masterful hand of the artisan at the still. Let that sense of calm, scientific precision, and cool stillness wash over your body, steadying your pulse and hushing the restless chatter of your thought. But the world is shifting once more as the Crusades and new, expanding trade routes bring the East and West into a new and turbulent contact. These potent, refined scents are beginning to flow toward a very different landscape. They are entering a Europe that is not looking for beauty or quiet prayer, but for a means of basic survival. The golden oils of Avicenna are about to become a desperate shield for a continent gripped by a deep, dark, and terrifying anxiety. When perfume finally re-entered the gates of medieval Europe, it did not arrive with the gentle romance of a garden or the quiet sanctity of a temple. It arrived as a desperate, heavy form of armor. The entire continent was gripped by the long, dark shadow of the plague and a persistent, terrifying belief that disease was carried not by germs, but through bad air, the infamous and dreaded miasma. People believed that foul odors were the invisible, airborne messengers of death itself. And so, to survive the streets, one had to surround themselves with a fortress of fragrance. Scent was no longer a matter of vanity or fashion. It was about the primal basic instinct to breathe without the paralyzing fear of the unknown. The physicians of this era became walking, ominous icons of this aromatic defense. They wore long, bird-like leather masks with prominent, hollow beaks that were stuffed with dried lavender, spicy cloves, sharp cinnamon, and cooling mint. These masks were designed to filter and purify every single breath the physician took, creating a fragrant, medicinal barrier between the healer and the surrounding sickness. At the same time, nobles and the wealthy elite carried pomanders, intricate, often spherical metal containers made of silver or gold, filled with concentrated spices, resins, and heavy musk. As they walked through crowded, chaotic markets or narrow, damp alleyways, they would hold these pomanders directly to their noses, sniffing the sharp, protective scent to ward off the invisible vapors of the street. Even the great, stone cathedrals began to burn much stronger incense, using the rising smoke not just for holiness, but as a desperate public health measure to cleanse the air for the congregation. There was a strange paradoxical tension defining this era of European history. While scent was celebrated as a holy savior, the act of washing with water was increasingly viewed with deep, profound suspicion. Bathing, once the central ritual of the Roman world, was now considered a dangerous and foolhardy act. It was widely believed that hot water opened the pores of the skin, allowing the deadly invisible miasma to enter the body more easily. As a result, many people avoided washing for many months or even entire years. Without the cleansing power of water, perfume became the primary way to mask the harsh realities of daily life. Heavy, animalic musks and pungent, Herbal oils were layered directly onto the skin, and unwashed silk clothes to create a personal atmosphere of cleanliness where none actually existed. Gloves were soaked in the scent of orange blossom, and heavy robes were fumigated with rosemary to create a fragrant distraction from the surrounding decay of the city. Yet, amidst this atmosphere of constant fear, the ancient, forgotten knowledge of distillation began to return to European soil. Through direct contact with the scholars of the Islamic world, alchemists in Spain and Italy rediscovered the secrets of the still. Monasteries, long the quiet and faithful keepers of herbal lore, began recording new, potent recipes. It was during the 14th century that the famous Hungary water appeared, one of the first alcohol-based perfumes in European history. A refreshing blend of rosemary and wine spirits, said to have restored the health and youth of a queen. Scent was evolving once again, moving away from the thick, heavy oils of the past toward lighter, more refreshing spirits that offered a true sense of renewal. Take a long, slow moment to feel yourself wrapped in that protective, ancient layer of scent. Imagine you are holding a cold, silver pomander in the palm of your hand, its surface etched with delicate, swirling pattern. Inside, the natural warmth of your skin releases the steady, calming aroma of dried lavender and spicy, warm cloves. This scent is your invisible shield. It creates a private, perfectly safe space around you, a small, unbreakable circle of peace that the outside world cannot penetrate. You are cocooned in this fragrant silver armor, sheltered and secure. The air you breathe is clean, floral, and deeply, profoundly soothing. Let that feeling of being protected allow you to release the lingering tension in your shoulders and the tightness in your chest. You are safe. The long era of fear is slowly receding, and the science of the monks is beginning to flourish in the sun. The primal fear of the miasma is finally giving way to a new national obsession with elegance, art, and high fashion. The heart of this fragrant world is preparing to move once again, leaving the dark, narrow alleyways of the medieval city for the sun-drenched floral hills of southern France. In a small blooming town called Grasse, a revolution is about to begin that will take scent from a desperate matter of life and death to the ultimate, shimmering height of human sophistication. By the 16th century, the heart of the fragrant world shifted its weight once more, finding a permanent and sun-drenched home in the rolling hills of southern France. At the very center of this aromatic empire stood a city that would eventually breathe the intoxicating scents of jasmine, centifolia roses, and blooming orange trees, the legendary town of Grasse. But Grasse was not always a paradise of soft petals. In its earliest days, it was known for the pungent, heavy, and often overwhelming trade of tanning leather. The narrow stone streets once carried the sharp, unpleasant odors of the tanneries, a rugged reality that seemed a world away from the delicate luxury of high fashion. However, when Catherine de' Medici arrived from the artistic courts of Italy to become the Queen of France, she brought with her a deep, sophisticated, and lifelong obsession with fragrance. She employed her own personal perfumer, who began the practice of scenting fine leather gloves to mask the harsh, animalic smell of the tanned hides. This single practical trend caught the vivid imagination of the French aristocracy and transformed Grasse from a center of leather into the world's undisputed and eternal cradle of modern perfumery. As the French court grew increasingly extravagant and detached from the mundane world, so too did its insatiable appetite for complex fragrance. The Grand Palace of Versailles, under the reign of Louis XIV, became a literal, sprawling temple of scent where every shadow was saturated with a different aroma. Public rooms were perfumed with cooling orange water. Heavy oak furniture was rubbed with scented beeswax, and courtiers powdered their elaborate towering wigs with the soft scent of violet and amber. It was whispered in the corridors that even the marble fountains were made to spray delicate rose water during royal celebrations. Behind this shimmering veil of glamour, however, was a continued necessity. Bathing remained an uncommon and mistrusted practice, and these heavy, masterful layers of perfume served to mask the unwashed realities of the age. Perfumers became the most prized artisans of the realm, training for decades in the sun-soaked hills of Provence to master the invisible art of composition, meticulously balancing fleeting top notes, lingering heart notes, and the deep, resonant bass notes that created liquid secrets for the elite. The hills surrounding Grasse became a living, breathing laboratory for these artists of the air. They learned to work in perfect, silent harmony with the ancient rhythms of nature, understanding that every flower possesses its own secret, internal clock. There is a profound and quiet revelation in the way these vast fields are harvested even today. The most delicate jasmine flowers are hand-picked with extreme care in the deep, velvet stillness of the night or the very earliest, gray hours of dawn. It is in the absolute darkness, before the first touch of the sun, that their scent is at its most potent, concentrated, and intoxicating. The pickers move through the long, leafy rows like silent shadows, gathering the white blossoms before the heat of the day can dissipate their fragile, precious, essential oils. It is a labor of immense, quiet patience and ancestral grace, a silent ritual of the hands that ensures the very soul of the flower is captured in its purest and most powerful form. Now, let your mind drift away to those rolling emerald hills of Provence. Imagine standing on a gentle grassy slope as the sun begins its slow, golden dip below the distant horizon, painting the vast sky in shifting shades of deep indigo and soft, dusty violet. Before you, a sea of lavender stretches as far as your eyes can see, the plants swaying in a slow, rhythmic, and hypnotic dance with the cooling evening breeze. The color is a soothing, muted purple that seems to pull the lingering tension right out of your muscles. Breathe in the cool, floral air. It is clean, herbal, and profoundly, deeply calming. There is no noise here, only the soft, distant hum of the wind and the gentle, repetitive rustle of the lavender stalks against one another. You are safe in this endless purple landscape, tucked away from the frantic rush of the world, held in the quiet, fragrant, and protective embrace of the French countryside. The science of the Enlightenment would soon bring about more stable alcohol-based scents and elegant, hand-blown glass bottles, turning perfume into a sophisticated and permanent art form. Scent was no longer merely a desperate mask against disease or a sacred whisper to the divine. It had evolved into something deeply personal, an invisible garment, a silent language spoken through memory and the warmth of the skin. As France led the world into a new era of refined fragrance, perfume was finally poised to step into the light of modernity, becoming more powerful, more expressive, and more profoundly human than ever before. It was no longer just a mask for the world. It was becoming the very essence of identity, a liquid emotion captured in glass. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the world began to move at a faster, more industrial, and more complex pace, and the art of perfume transformed along with it. No longer a luxury reserved solely for priests or kings. Fragrance became a personal choice for everyone, entering a phase that was both creatively daring and deeply intimate. Scientific breakthroughs allowed chemists to isolate individual aroma molecules, creating synthetic scents like vanillin and coumarin that did not rely on the unpredictable whims of nature alone. In 1921, a true and lasting revolution arrived with the birth of Chanel No. 5, created by the master perfumer Ernest Beau and the legendary fashion icon Coco Chanel. It broke every traditional rule of the craft. It did not smell like a simple, recognizable garden of roses or lilies. It smelled clean, modern, abstract, and entirely new. Chanel famously claimed she wanted a scent that smelled like a woman, not a flower. And with that single bold statement, the world of fragrance changed forever. In this modern age, perfume has become far more than just a pleasant aroma. It has become a silent, invisible diary, a way to store memories that words are often too clumsy to contain. A single deep breath of a specific scent can transport you instantly across years and oceans back to a lost summer evening by a cooling sea, a sun-drenched kitchen from your early childhood, or the familiar scent of a coat belonging to a loved one who's no longer near. It is a vessel for pure emotion in vapor form, providing a quiet sense of presence in the midst of absence. Each elegant bottle on a shelf is a story waiting to be reopened, a mood that can be worn like a second skin, allowing you to choose exactly who you want to be with just a single, misty spray. Even as we look toward the shifting horizon of the future, the alchemy of scent continues to evolve in ways that border on the fantastical. There is a strange and fascinating revelation in our digital age. Today, master perfumers are collaborating with artificial intelligence to generate entirely new and complex fragrance combinations that have never been imagined by a human mind. We can now map the molecular structure of ancient scents to recreate the aroma of long-extinct flowers, or even capture the cold, metallic, and vacuum-like smell of space. Yet, despite this high-tech frontier of science, the core reason we reach for a bottle of perfume remains as ancient as the smoke-filled temples of Egypt. We long to be remembered, to leave a lingering trace of our soul in the air, and to find a deep, primal comfort in the familiar. Take a slow, deep, and final breath of this fragrant history. Imagine the clean, herbal, and steady scent of lavender once more, so pure and so grounding that it anchors you to this very moment of peace. Let the aroma fill your lungs completely, expanding slowly like a soft cloud, and then releasing with a long, effortless, and quiet exhale. As you breathe out, imagine you are drifting far away from the digital world, away from the glowing screens and the constant noise, and into a space that is timeless, analog, and still. You are safe, your limbs are feeling heavy and warm, and you are ready to let go of the day. The world of scent is a gentle, invisible tide, and you are floating effortlessly on its surface, moving closer and closer to the edge of a deep and dreamless sleep. The scent is fading now, evaporating into the cool, dark night air like a flickering memory at dawn. But as the aroma vanishes into the absolute stillness of your room, the silence is not empty. A new kind of vibration is beginning to stir in the distance, a low, rhythmic, and profound resonance that feels like a steady heartbeat. Far away, across the mist-covered waters of the Mediterranean, a new stage is being carefully set. The heavy velvet curtains of an ancient Italian theater are starting to tremble, and a single, pure and golden note is about to rise into the air. The story of scent is complete, but the story of sound, the grand, soaring, and eternal legacy of the human voice, is just beginning to wake. As the 1500s drew to a gentle, golden close, the air of Italy was thick with the vibrant, creative energy of a deep transformation. The Renaissance had successfully rekindled a profound passion for the ancient world. Looking back with longing, not only at its silent marble statues and grand Stoic philosophies, but also at its vivid myths, its sacred theater, and its mysterious, lost music. In the quiet, candlelit chambers of Florence, a small and dedicated circle of poets, visionary composers, and restless scholars began to gather around the aristocratic Count Giovanni de Bardi. They called themselves the Camerata, and their mission was as bold as it was spiritual. They were not merely looking to create a new form of entertainment. They saw themselves as archaeologists of sound, searching for a forgotten way to recreate the immense, raw emotional power of ancient Greek drama. They asked a peculiar, haunting question that echoed through the stone halls. What did the legendary plays of Sophocles and Euripides truly sound like when they were first performed under the vast open sky? The thinkers of the late Renaissance held a firm, beautiful belief that the great ancient Greek tragedies were never simply spoken in a dry voice, but were sung in their entire, melodic duration. They imagined a lost world where music and human speech flowed together as a single, inseparable, and powerful river of expression. The Camerata sought a new kind of music that could move the human soul directly and instantly, unencumbered by the complex, tangled counterpoints and overlapping voices of the era's traditional choral styles. Out of this collective, artistic longing, a revolutionary new musical form began to emerge. Monody. It consisted of a single, clear, and expressive melodic line sung by one solitary voice, supported only by a simple, unobtrusive instrumental accompaniment. It was a voice finely unburdened, free to tell a long story, not with words alone, but with the raw, naked, and honest weight of human feeling. There is a fascinating and deeply personal revelation tucked away in the very heart of this intellectual circle. One of the most passionate and vocal members of the Camerata was Vincenzo Galilei, a master lutenist and the father of the legendary astronomer Galileo Galilei. Vincenzo argued fiercely that harmony should never be allowed to dominate human expression. He believed that music should perfectly mirror the natural, rhythmic rise and fall of human speech, echoing the very pace of thought and the shifting, unpredictable tides of deep emotion. Just as his son would later look to the distant stars to understand the complex mechanics of the heavens, Vincenzo looked into the human voice to map the delicate mechanics of the heart. He believed that in the absolute simplicity of a single, soaring melody lay the secret key to unlocking the deepest, most hidden chambers of the human experience. Now, take a slow, deep moment to settle into the absolute stillness that exists in the space between the notes of a song. Imagine a single silver string of a lute being plucked in a dark, perfectly quiet room. Listen closely as the sound vibrates, expands into the air, and then slowly, very slowly, begins to fade back into the velvet silence from which it first came. There is no rush to fill the air with noise in this Florentine dream. The silence is just as important as the music itself. It is the empty canvas upon which the story of the soul is painted. Let your own breathing find that same gentle, unhurried, and natural rhythm. You are safe in this ancient world of quiet experiments and candle-lit thought. The music of the Camerata is like a soft, steady hand guided by the wisdom of the past, leading you away from the frantic complexities of your day and into a space of pure, melodic, and lasting peace. These first experiments were modest, intimate, and rare, performed only for small groups of the Florentine elite in private high-ceilinged salons. They were musical dramas based on ancient myths, designed not to dazzle with modern spectacle, but to stir the soul with the ancient power of rhythmic recitation. But slowly, remarkably, this unnamed art form began to take its first true, independent breath. It was no longer just a collection of sounds, and it was no longer just a written story. It was a fusion of both a living, breathing human theater that was finally beginning to step into the light. Opera had inhaled its first breath of air in the halls of Florence, and it was now prepared to expand, to grow, and to explode into a magnificent reality that would one day capture the imagination of the entire world. While the early brave pioneers of Florence laid the foundational stones of this new art, it was the undeniable genius of Claudio Monteverdi who breathed the true, enduring, and passionate soul into its frame. Born in the city of Cremona in 1567, Monteverdi stood as a magnificent bridge between two vast, different musical worlds, the fading, elegant restraint of the Renaissance and the rising, dramatic and emotional energy of the Baroque. He possessed a rare, innate gift for understanding the complex psychological interior of a character, knowing exactly how to translate the invisible, subtle shifts of the human spirit into the universal language of sound. In the year 1607, in the majestic court of Mantua, he premiered a work that would change the entire course of music history forever, L'Orfeo. It was a brilliant retelling of the ancient myth of Orpheus, the legendary musician, whose song was so incredibly beautiful it could move stones, calm wild beasts, and even charm the cold, stony hearts of the gods of the underworld. The story of Orpheus was one of profound, eternal love and devastating, quiet loss. It followed the desperate musician as he descended into the dark, silent, and misty depths of Hades to plead for the life and the return of his beloved wife, Eurydice. Others had tried to set this famous myth to music before, but Monteverdi's version was fundamentally and powerfully different. He did not treat the music as a mere decorative background for the spoken words. He made the music speak the words itself, giving them a weight and a color they had never known. When Orpheus rejoices in the light of his love, the music dances with a light, skipping, and rhythmic energy. But when he mourns his sudden loss, the harmonies begin to weep, twisting and turning with the heavy, agonizing weight of a broken heart. In Monteverdi's masterful hands, opera became a unified, dramatic experience where every single note was a heartbeat and every lingering chord was a breath of life. There is a technical and visceral revelation in the specific way Monteverdi chose to paint the soundscape of the afterlife. For his production of L'Orfeo, he utilized a full and remarkably diverse orchestra, which was an extraordinary and daring rarity for the time. He used delicate, shimmering strings, harps, and flutes to represent the world of the living, the warmth of the sun, and the beauty of the open field. But to describe the terrifying, hollow, and echoing sounds of the underworld, he introduced the deep, brassy, and ominous resonance of the trombone, an instrument usually associated only with the solemnity of the church, but here used to evoke the dark, subterranean, and airless depths of the earth. It was a revolutionary choice of orchestration, using the specific color and texture of an instrument to build a physical, believable world in the mind of the listener. He proved that music could not only express an emotion, but could also construct an entire, immersive reality, from the brightest, sun-drenched meadow to the darkest, most silent abyss. As you listen to this history unfolding, imagine the gentle, steady, and hypnotic sound of Orpheus plucking the golden strings of his lyre. The music is soft, repetitive, and deeply, profoundly soothing. It is a melody designed to lead you safely through the misty, sun-dappled fields of your own memory, away from the sharp, stressful edges of the present moment. Imagine the sound of a single, ancient harp its notes rising like silver bubbles in a calm, still pool of water. Each individual note is a moment of total peace, guiding you further and further into a state of quiet, effortless reflection. You are safe, tucked away in the cool shadows of the great theater in Mantua, watching as this timeless story of love and music unfolds before your eyes. The dark world of the underworld is just a story, a thin velvet curtain that only makes the warm light of the melody seem even more secure and protective. Orfeo was a magnificent triumph of both artistic innovation and raw human passion, proving once and for all that opera was far more than a mere intellectual experiment for scholars. It was a powerful, moving engine of entertainment and deep emotion. Monteverdi showed the world that the human voice could carry both the immense grandeur of an empire and the intimate, quiet suffering of a single, lonely soul. With this one masterpiece, the art form of opera ceased to be a mere theory and became a living, breathing, and permanent theater. It had matured in the private gilded courts of Mantua, but the energy of the music was far too great to be contained by palace walls for much longer. The era of the private, courtly performance is now drawing to its natural close. The heavy, iron-studded doors of the palaces are beginning to swing open to the world, and the music of Orpheus is preparing to spill out into the salt-streaked streets and the crowded, misty canals of a very different kind of city. Opera is leaving the aristocratic salons of the elite and stepping bravely into the vibrant, loud, and unpredictable world of the public. The city of Venice is calling, with its dozens of theaters, its mysterious masks, and its restless merchant energy, ready to take this new art and turn it into a magnificent spectacle for every soul who walks across its stone bridges. In the year 1637, a quiet but monumental shift occurred that would forever change the accessibility of art. The very first public opera house, the Teatro San Cassiano, opened its doors to the world. For the first time in human history, opera stepped out of the gilded private salons of the nobility and into the vibrant salt-streaked streets of the city. This meant that ordinary citizens, not just dukes and scholars, could simply buy a ticket and witness the unfolding of a staged musical drama. It was a radical democratization of beauty, where the power of the human voice was no longer a secret kept behind palace walls, but a shared experience for any soul seeking enchantment in the misty Venetian evening. Venice was the perfect liquid stage for this transformation, a city built on trade, mystery, and a relentless love for spectacle. It was a place that thrived on drama, both in the bustling markets and on the silent, moonlit canals. During the legendary Venetian Carnival, the lines between social classes began to blur as masks hid identities and status, allowing the rich and the poor to mingle in a collective dream of performance. Opera added another profound layer to this enchantment, becoming a business that blended high art with mass appeal. The theaters themselves were restructured to accommodate this new world. Private boxes were built for noble families, while the pit filled with the general public, all gathered together under the same flickering candlelight to be moved by the same melody. As the popularity of this art form soared, the city's landscape changed to reflect its obsession. There is a startling revelation in the sheer scale of this growth. By the middle of the 1600s, Venice, a city already dense with history, boasted over a dozen opera houses, each competing fiercely for the public's attention. The opera season became a tradition aligned with the carnival, a time of indulgence where music became the primary language of the streets. Composers were forced to adapt, making the music more expressive, the arias longer and more virtuosic, and the stagecraft more lavish. Ships, palaces, and even infernos would rise from trapdoors on the stage, all designed to dazzle a public that had grown hungry for wonder. Now, imagine yourself stepping out of a gondola and into the warm, inviting glow of a Venetian theater. Feel the transition from the cool, damp air of the canal to the dry, scented warmth of the wood-paneled interior. You are shown to a private, luxury box, a small, velvet-lined sanctuary of your own. Sit back in the plush chair and feel the smooth, polished wood of the railing beneath your hands. Below you, the theater is a sea of soft shadows and flickering candles, their light dancing off the gilded ornaments and the silk dresses of the audience. The air is still, the world outside the heavy doors is forgotten, and you are perfectly safe in this wooden cradle of art. As the candles are dimmed and the first notes of the orchestra rise like a soft mist, you realize you are exactly where you are meant to be. The glory of Venice's theaters created a new kind of temple of the voice, where the audience did not just follow the story, but followed the singer. In this atmosphere of intense competition and artistic brilliance, the focus began to shift from the myth itself to the extraordinary humans who could bring it to life. Within this golden glow of candlelight and applause, a new kind of superstar was emerging from the shadows. They were figures of legend, possessing voices that seemed to defy the natural limits of the human body, ready to elevate the art of opera into something truly celestial. As the voice became the undisputed king of the Venetian stage, the 17th and 18th centuries witnessed the rise of the castrati male singers, who possessed a vocal range and power that felt almost supernatural. These men had been castrated as young boys to preserve their high, silver-toned vocal registers. But as they grew, they developed the lung capacity and physical strength of adult men. The result was a voice unlike any other in history, powerful yet agile, brilliant yet ethereal, capable of floating delicately over a full orchestra or hurling thunderous notes down from the stage. To the audiences of the time, these voices did not sound human. They sounded like the echoes of angels, a celestial resonance brought down to earth. The castrati became the first true superstars of the modern world, commanding enormous fees and inspiring a level of frenzied admiration that bordered on worship. They were adored and envied, their names whispered in every court and tavern across the continent. Composers began to write operas specifically to highlight their singular talents, creating complex song forms like the da capo ariage. This form allowed a singer to deliver a simple, beautiful melody, only to depart into breathtaking, elaborate improvisations when the theme returned. These were the moments the audience lived for, when a single performer, alone in the spotlight, would soar through trills, leaps, and runs on a single, impossible breath. Among these giants, one name rose above all others: Farinelli. There is a beautiful, almost mythic revelation regarding the power of his voice. Farinelli's fame reached such proportions that it was widely believed his singing possessed actual healing properties. Legend tells us that he was summoned to the court of Spain to sing for King Philip V, who was suffering from a deep and paralyzing depression. For a decade, Farinelli sang the same 4 arias to the king every single night, and it was said that only through this nightly ritual of celestial sound could the monarch find the peace and clarity to rule. His voice was not just entertainment, it was a sanctuary, a bridge between the suffering of the mind and the peace of the spirit. Now, close your eyes and let those high, smooth, and otherworldly notes wash over you like a warm tide. Imagine a voice that has no edges, no strain, and no limit, a sound that is as clear as crystal and as soft as silk. It rises effortlessly, higher and higher, like a bird catching an invisible current of air. Listen to the long, sustained notes that seem to vibrate in the very center of your chest, calming your heartbeat and hushing the restless chatter of your mind. You are drifting on this sea of sound, supported by its strength and soothed by its beauty. The music is a cradle, rocking you gently back and forth, carrying you away from the weight of the day and into a space of pure, celestial light. The power of the human voice had reached its furthest, most impossible edge, and the world was listening. Opera was no longer merely a curious Italian experiment or a local tradition of the Venetian canals. It had become an international phenomenon, a universal language of emotion and power that spoke to kings in London, merchants in Germany, and nobles in France. The Italian style, with its focus on vocal brilliance and dramatic fire, had conquered the cultural landscape of Europe. But as this grand art form moved northward, it was about to encounter new cultures and new languages, preparing for its final transformation into something even more human and relatable. For decades, the world of opera had belonged almost exclusively to the realm of God, ancient heroes, and mythic sacrifices. It was a world of high style and noble restraint, where every emotion was elevated to a celestial level. But by the middle of the 18th century, a new and vibrant sound began to stir at the very edge of the gilded stage, the sound of human laughter. This was the birth of opera buffa, literally, comic opera genre that rejected the stiff formality of the past in favor of something far more relatable, earthly, and alive. It pushed aside the ancient kings and deities to give the spotlight to ordinary people you might pass on a sun-drenched Italian street. Cunning servants, foolish old men, jealous lovers, and clever maids. This transformation was more than just a change in plot. It was a revolution in the musical language itself. Gone were the endless, predictable arias and the lofty, slow recitatives of the serious style. In their place came lively ensembles where characters burst onto the stage, singing over one another, interrupting, reacting, and plotting in real time. The rhythms quickened, the comic timing sharpened, and the orchestration grew playful, as if the instruments themselves were sharing in the joke. Music was no longer just a vessel for divine sorrow. It had become a mirror for the wit, the mischief, and the beautiful flaws of the human condition. There is a charming and unexpected revelation in how this genre first captured the heart of the continent. One of the greatest landmarks of the era, Giovanni Battista Pergolesi's La Serva Padrona, was never intended to be a standalone masterpiece. In 1733, it was merely a short intermezzo, a brief, light-hearted skit performed during the intermissions of a much longer, serious opera. Yet, this simple story of a clever maid outwitting her bumbling master was so delightful and so human that it became a sensation. Traveling from the streets of Naples to the royal courts of Paris and beyond, it proved that audiences were hungry for stories grounded in the everyday, where humor and emotion felt real and immediate. This playful spirit would eventually be elevated to the highest level of art by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who took these comic archetypes and infused them with profound human insight in his own timeless masterpiece. Now, let those playful, skipping melodies drift through your mind like a gentle afternoon breeze. Imagine the light, rhythmic tapping of a harpsichord, its sound as bright and effortless as sunlight dancing on a ripple of water. The heavy, dramatic weight of the day is lifting, replaced by a sense of mischief and ease. You are safe, tucked away in a quiet corner of a theater, watching as the characters on stage navigate their world with a wink and a smile. There is no tragedy here, no impossible burden to carry. Every note is a soft invitation to let go of your worries and join in the lightness of the moment. The melodies are like a warm hand, guiding you toward a place where even those complex problems find a simple musical resolution. The stage is finally set, and the grand tapestry of human history has found its voice through laughter as much as through tears. The stories of the gods have faded into the background, leaving us with the comforting, familiar sounds of our own lives, sung back to us with grace and wit. As the final notes of the ensemble echo through the hall, the energy begins to soften. The vibrant colors of the stage are dimming, and the air is growing cool and quiet. The grand performance of the day is drawing to its natural conclusion, and the heavy velvet curtain is beginning its slow, silent descent for a long and dreamless sleep. We have traveled a vast and winding path tonight, crossing through the layers of time and the shifting boundaries of empires. We began on the dust-choked trails of the Silk Road with Marco Polo, watching as he bridged the gap between the familiar West and the golden mysteries of the East. We felt the heat of the Gobi Sands and the thin, silver air of the Pamir Mountains, following a boy who grew into a man through the power of observation and curiosity. From those ancient caravan trails, we drifted into the sacred, swirling smoke of Egyptian temples and the lush, secret gardens of Persia, tracing the alchemy of scent as it transformed from a prayer into a refined science of the soul. And finally, we stood in the candlelit RP hut of Venice, where the human voice was elevated into something celestial, and where laughter finally found its place among the stars. As we look back, it becomes clear that history is far more than a collection of dates or a list of long-forgotten names. It is something we carry within us. It is in the very breath we take, the subtle scents that linger in our memories, and the rhythmic sounds that shape our world. Every journey we have explored tonight was a human attempt to reach for something greater, to express a truth that words alone could never contain. Whether it was a merchant describing the wonders of a foreign land, an alchemist capturing the essence of a rose, or a singer stretching a single note toward the heavens, these were all efforts to bridge the gap between ourselves and the infinite. There is a profound and comforting revelation in this shared human legacy. We realize that whether through the travels of a Venetian merchant, the creation of a masterpiece of perfume, or the birth of a new musical art form, humanity has always sought to find wonder just beyond the horizon. These stories are not just tales of the past. They are the seeds of our own curiosity, the roots of our own dreams. They remind us that the world is vast, complex, and beautiful, and that we are never truly alone in our longing for discovery. Now, let the echoes of these stories fade into the absolute stillness of your room. Imagine the final, faint scent of lavender or rose water evaporating into the night air, leaving only a sense of purity and peace. The voices of the past are growing distant now, turning into a low hypnotic hum that blends with the rhythm of your own breathing. You are safe. You are held in the quiet embrace of time. The journey is over. The work of the day is done. And there is nothing left to do but surrender to the dark, protective weight of sleep. But may you sleep deeply, surrounded by the gentle vibrations of a history that is as soft as silk and as enduring as stone. The past has shared its secrets with you, and now it offers you its most precious gift, the silence that comes after the story is told. Let yourself sink into that silence, drifting further and further away as the world of names and dates dissolves into the world of dream. Good night, and may your rest be as vast and as peaceful as the horizon Marco Polo once chased.